What is going on, guys? We are back for another episode of Pokemon Top 5s. This week we'll be covering the poison typing. The poison typing is typically a type that I've always looked at to be one of the more niche required typings to be able to be effective. And what I mean by that is that, like, when you think about like wild and like how Pokemon are created and everything, typically animals that rely on poison are typically unable to like straight up beat its opponent, and so they require poison to weaken their opponent to be able to fight back. So ultimately the poison typing, despite having a very nice niche of being able to counter fairy types, traditionally struggle in the competitive scene of Pokemon. And so a lot of these Pokemon today, unfortunately they are of the weaker variety, but they are my personal favorites for a variety of reasons, whether it be, you know, like the anime when I was a kid, or I just really enjoyed using the Pokemon, and so they're not really ranked in any particular order. As you guys know, all my top 5s are 100% opinionated, and they're not just based off of stats or move pools. They're kind of based off a variety of things that aren't always statistically related. And of course, we use the primary typings on this list. Secondary typings we have chosen to leave off the list just so we can have a little bit more variety with these lists. And also legendaries will not be on the list, as I plan to do a top 10 kind of special for legendaries later on. But without further ado, I would love to see your top 5 lists for this week in the comment section down below. And make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you haven't, so you don't miss out on any of this series or any other series that we do here on the channel. But without further ado, let us hop in to number 5. Alright, so at number 5 we have Arbok, the Cobra Pokemon. Now, this Pokemon obviously heavily influenced by Jesse and James of the Pokemon anime. Obviously a super awful Pokemon that Jesse had. Really wasn't able to do a whole lot, but it tried its best. You know, it is what it is. And of course, this is the definition of what I was talking about, right? A snake that uses intimidation to lower its opponent's attack, poison its opponent, and then hit it as best it can. But obviously Arbok suffers from not really having very good base stats, unfortunately. Like in the 60s, low 60s for most of its stats. It does have a decent attack stat, but it has like this kind of middle tier speed stat, and so when you couple low speed with poor defenses and poor HP, unfortunately this Pokemon just doesn't really have the ability to do anything really competitively. In the lower tiers though, it will try to set up with Coil, and then which helps its attack, its defense, and its accuracy. But you know, it does struggle. Gunk Shot, Sucker Punch, and then one of Aqua Tail, Earthquake, or Seed Bomb is really what it's going to try to go for. The only way that you're really going to get anything out of it, out of a base power not set up move, is if you Choice Band it. But really, I mean, this Pokemon is just a... for me, this Pokemon is on this list for Jesse. When I think of Jesse, I think of Arbok. And so, for me, that is why this is on my number 5 list today. Without further ado, let us hop in to number 4. Alright, so at number 4 we have Toxicroak, the Toxic Mouth Pokemon. This Pokemon is probably actually one of the better Pokemon on this list if you're looking statistically and competitively. This Pokemon is has a little bit more to it than what I was kind of saying in the intro. This Pokemon actually is a decent offensive Pokemon. And so traditionally as a fighting type, it gets a little bit more offense. And so its secondary typing has really helped it become a stronger offensive threat. And on top of that, this Pokemon gets 2 ways to set up. It can attack with Swords Dance or Nasty Plot, and then it just goes in from there. Gunk Shot, Sludge Bomb, Drain Punch, Focus Blast, Shadow Ball, Sucker Punch, Knockoff. Like, this thing is a real threat offensively. With 106 attack, 86 special attack, and then you're getting +2 into those stats with a fairly okay speed stat. It's a little bit higher than Arbok at 85. So again, it's not really blowing doors away, but the biggest difference between Arbok and Toxicroak competitively is that one, Swords Dance Nasty Plot gives you +2. So you get a better attack boost than anything that Arbok could do. Then when you get into it, the fact that it's actually a threat on the physical or special side, sometimes you can catch people off guard with what set you are. And then on top of that, its physical set, which is also its naturally higher stat, has a priority move and a recovery move. And so when you topple all that together, I mean, it just makes this Pokemon such a threat, right? It has the ability to heal itself. It has the ability to poison you. It has the ability to raise its own stats to make it even more of a threat offensively. And then it has the ability to use a priority move with +2 priority. And on top of that, that priority move also just happens to cover its ×4 weakness to Psychic. And so you can kind of just see how all of that accumulates to it being such a stronger Pokemon, right? But yeah, I mean, design-wise, this thing is super dope. You know, if you were a fighting type, like gym leader or a fighting type trainer, I mean, Toxicroak makes so much sense for your team, right? It just gives you a little bit of a different dynamic. The fact that it can hit both physically and specially, it's kind of like Lucario in a lot of ways. And so, as much as Lucario is probably my favorite Pokemon, period, I get a lot of Lucario vibes from what it can do in terms of stylistically. And so I've always meshed really well with this Pokemon. And so for me, it had to be a number 4 on my list. But without further ado, let us hop in to number 3. Alright, so at number 3, we have Nidoqueen, one of the original 151 Pokemon again. This list has actually quite a few Pokemon that are related to it, which is kind of nice. But of course, Nidoqueen is just mixed bulk is what Nidoqueen really is. 90 HP, 87 defense, 85 special defense. Like, this thing is your traditional Gen 1 mixed bulk Pokemon. With Sheer Force, this Pokemon actually has a decent attack stat. Even though its physical defense, or its physical attack is actually higher than its special attack, it tends to want to run special moves because Sheer Force negates the secondary effects of whatever your moves are, but then gives you an attack boost in that particular stat. So a lot of the special moves for Nidoqueen all have secondary effects, and so it just makes that Pokemon stat just seem to be a little bit better. And then this Pokemon has 2 main functions. It's kind of this setup Pokemon with Stealth Rocks, Toxic, Taunt, Toxic Spikes kind of deal, or it just runs an all offensive Earth Power, Sludge Wave, Ice Beam, Fire Blast set, and just tries to just use its coverage moves to hit as many things as hard as possible before it eventually goes down. And so for Nidoqueen, for me, I always liked Nidoqueen better than Nidoking just because of the bulk, but competitively Nidoking is probably the better Pokemon. But for me, I just always really loved Nidoqueen. You know, in the early games of Kanto, you can get a Nidoqueen immediately, and then it's just a monster in your game, right? So for me, I have a lot of nostalgic with using Nidoqueen and liking the Pokemon for that. We're actually using it in our Pokemon Insurgence Nuzlocke that we are doing currently at the time of me making this video. So, but without further ado, let us hop in to number 2. Alright, so coming in at number 2, we have Weezing, and of course this Pokemon is the same as Arbok, but going with a better character, James. This is the staple for James. If you think of James, you think of Weezing. And Weezing, again, of course, same thing with Arbok, not very good competitively, but the biggest difference is that Weezing actually has a fairly good attack stat in both stats. 90 and 85 is the start of, if you have a good defensive stat somewhere and you have attack stats like these, you can actually start being a competitive threat defensively, as well as being able to chip in with the team offensively. Now this thing really only has one thing that it can do. Sludge Bomb, Flamethrower are its really only two viable offensive moves. Sometimes Dark Pulse if you can really fit the move, but a lot of the times it doesn't have a good HP stat and it has a decent defense stat. And so really what you're looking to do is just Will-O-Wisp things, burn them, have their attack, and then sit there with your 120 defense and just try to stall out. And so this Pokemon really is more of a stally Pokemon. Again, it can't really physically overmatch its opponents, and so it's relying on Toxic or Burns to really help it in battle. But for me, this Pokemon is number 2 on the list. It reminds me of James too much. I cannot ignore that. And it's just a cool Pokemon, right? And even the Galarian form is super cool too, right? With the big top hat, adding the fairy typing, like it's actually really, really cool. But without further ado, let us hop into number 1. And at number 1, we have Crobat, easily the best Pokemon on this list. Again, kind of same thing as Toxicroak, able to kind of set up on both sides, physically or specially. And this thing, it has reliable recovery, it can U-turn, it can Super Fang, which automatically cuts your opponent's HP in half. It gets Defog, Taunt, Haze, Tailwind, Quick Guard. Like this thing is utility, utility, utility. This thing you can put on any team, and it just kind of finds a way to be a support Pokemon in a variety of ways. And so for me, this Pokemon is just super splashable on a team, and it's really, really fast. 130, I think, is one of the fastest Pokemon in the game, period. And so for me, this Pokemon, it reminds me, you know, it has a vampire vibes going with it. It's easily the best competitively, and I think design-wise, this thing is actually just incredible. You know, having a good bat Pokemon, like, they actually messed up the next bat they did. Like, Noivern, as much as it has a niche, it's kind of a weird fit with bats. But for me, Crobat just always naturally fit it better. And so for me, it had to be number 1 on the list. But with that, guys, that is the end of our top 5 list this week. And I want to thank everyone for sticking around and watching the video. Let me know your top 5 in the comment section down below. And with that, I'm gonna get up out of here. But thanks everyone for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one.